Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. No matter where you're listening around the world, this is Sedona Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Intuitive Guidance with Lindsay Marino. Today is Monday, May 23rd, 2016. I hope you all are doing well. I am so excited about tonight's guest. Tonight's guest has actually been on Intuitive Guidance a few times with different books, and his name is Garnet Schulhauser, and he has written many books, but tonight he is going to talk about his book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. This book is one of those books that has so much energy to it just by reading the information, the summary of it before it actually officially came out. I knew that this was going to be a powerful book, and he's going to share some information with how he actually Garnet had some outer body experiences and connecting with his guide Albert, and how he could see the wonders of the universe. He even saw the Akashic records, distant planets with fascinating life forms, and a human civilization that made the shift to the new earth. So I can't wait to talk to him about that. But before I welcome Garnet to the show, I did want to bring up some things that were coming up for events for me. One thing, if you have not done it already, is I do have a free class on my website. If you go to lindsaymarino.com, Lindsay with an A-Y, you can go on there and you'll see, even at the very top bar, it says Unlock Your Intuition in 30 Minutes. It's a free class. You can sign up there, and you'll get the replay to that class in your email. Or if you don't notice it there, even if you scroll down a little bit, there's a little picture of a key with a flower, and you can click on it there. So there's two spots for it. A lot of people that took that course really had great results, and it's funny how quick you can really become aware of your intuition, because we all have it just by watching that episode. And that's a big thing, to make sure that you use your intuition, and you can actually see the tips that help you with uncovering this gift that you have. I also, in that free class, I teach you how to use your intuition, your intuitive nudges, to realize that there's abundance all around you. So make sure that you tune in there. A lot of people have been asking me, what can I do to fine-tune my intuition? I know I have something, but I don't know where to start. And this is the perfect spot for you to go to. So definitely check that out. Another thing I wanted to mention was I will be in California, Napa Valley, California. There are some people there that I'll be doing an event for. So I'm going to probably do an intimate event. It will be a small little gathering for messages from heaven. So if you are in the area, whether you're in Napa or you're in someplace in California, if you would like an in-person reading or going to a small event to receive messages from past loved ones, let me know if you are interested. Go to my website, and you can just let me know right there. You can go to the contact button, and from there, just tell me that you're in California and you're interested in my Messages from Heaven event, or you're interested in a private reading. Now, another thing that I want to let you know is Tony and I, my husband, we're doing a cross-country trip. So this cross-country trip, we will be traveling from Tampa, Florida. We're going to stop in Sedona. We're going to stop in Vegas. California, Texas, where else? New Orleans, St. Louis. I'll definitely be doing an event in St. Louis. And then heading to Massachusetts. That's where I'm from, so I will be doing some group readings there. I know there have been lots of you asking about Massachusetts. So I want to let you know that whenever I go to Massachusetts, usually my spots are sold out. Every time that I've been there, they've been sold out. So if you're interested, make sure you let me know so that you can get a spot. I just want to let you know because I know some people want to do the in-person reading. But just to kind of reiterate, with the in-person reading versus the phone, it's exactly the same energy. All of that is the same. You get the same information, but some people just like to sit across from me and get the information. So I just wanted to let you know about that so you're aware of how it works. But yes, that's a side note. But let me read you a little bit about Garnet Schulhauser. He's an amazing man, and you know, I do the radio show because I absolutely love it, and I have some amazing guests on the show. But I will say that this is one of my favorite people to talk to because there's so many interesting things that come from him and his experience with connecting with other realms and with Albert, his spirit guide. And I think tonight's going to be an interesting show. I know it will be. With him. So I'm going to read you a little bit about Garnet. Garnet is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with wife Kathy and little dog Abby. He grew up on a small farm and moved to Canada after law school, where he practiced corporate law for over 30 years with two blue-collar chip law firms. After retiring from his law firm in 2008, he began his new career as an author, and his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, was published in 2012. Since the release of his first book, Garnet has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements and has been a frequent guest on radio talk shows. When he's not writing or connecting with his follower, Garnet enjoys golfing, nature walks in the forest with Abby, and family gatherings with his sons Blake and Colin and their partners Lauren and Burgess and granddaughter Chimera. So I can't wait for him to talk about dancing forever with spirit. So welcome to the show, Garnet. Welcome back, actually.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you for having me back. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, you are welcome. So I know I read a little bit about you and your bio, and I know you've been on the show previously, but I want to just tell the people that are listening for the first time a little bit about how all of this started happening for you. If you can tell us just a kind of a brief summary about how you connected with Albert first and how you started receiving this information, that would be amazing.
Sure, Lindsay. It was back in 2007. I was still practicing law, and I was walking down the street one sunny afternoon in May, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man jumped out in front of me and stopped me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man with stringy hair and scraggly beard and dirty, slept-in clothes. But he was looking at me in two different ways. In one sense, his eyes seemed to be penetrating deep within me, right down to the depths of my soul. But at the same time, his gaze from his sparkling blue eyes was sending me a wave of pure, unconditional love that just seemed to infuse my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security. So I stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. And he finally broke the spell by saying to me, "Why are you here?" Then he promptly disappeared into a nearby store. So when I finally collected my wits, I went into the store to try to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. So I went back out on the street, and I walked up and down for 10 or 15 minutes, couldn't find him. He had seemingly disappeared into thin air. So the very next day, same time, I went back to the same street, hoping to spot this man. And after walking up and down for a few blocks, I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you and why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And that was the beginning of a dialogue I had with this man that went off and on for the next few months. And I found out his name was Albert, and he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And so we had an amazing dialogue, and he revealed a lot of things to me that basically flew in the face of what a lot of Christian holy men have been preaching for centuries, in terms of answering the questions like who am I, why am I here, what's my life's purpose, and what happens to me after I die. And so his revelations were really quite startling, quite amazing. And he asked me to write a book about his revelations so they'd be available to everyone. And that resulted in my very first book, Dancing on a Stamp, which was published in 2012. And then after I finished that book, he disappeared from my life for a little while. Then he came back in a very different sort of way. I woke up one night in my bed, and I saw this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And when it moved closer, I could see it was my old friend Albert, but he was in astral form. And he says, I've come to take you on a series of out-of-body astral trips to the spirit side, to other places in the universe, to other places on our planet, because I want you to write about what you see and hear in your second book. And so off we went, and he literally reached out, grabbed my astral hand, pulled my astral body out of my physical body, and then we just rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and then hovered above a high spot above our very beautiful planet for a while before he led me through a shimmering doorway to the spirit side. And so that was my first set of astral trips with him, which I chronicled in my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. And then when I'd finished that set of adventures and I was busy writing the manuscript for my second book, he disappeared from my life again for a while. And then he came back again, also in astral form, same pattern, shows up in my bedroom one night unannounced and says, come on, I have another set of adventures for you to go on. And so away we went, and that resulted in the adventures that I describe in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, which has just been released in March. And so that's sort of the brief summary of my history with my spirit guide, Albert.
Yes, this is amazing. I feel so blessed to talk to you about this. And it's so interesting. Each time you tell the story, it makes me feel like, oh my gosh, I just have so many questions still because I want to learn about it. So you said the last book that you wrote, what was the name of that one?
Dance of Heavenly Bliss, just released in March.
Yes, Dance of Heavenly Bliss. And I wanted, because we spoke about dancing on a stamp previously, and then we also spoke Dance Forever with Spirit, didn't we?
Yes, yeah. So we haven't talked about my third book yet.
Okay, that is the third one, and that's the Dance of Heavenly Bliss. Okay, perfect. So can you talk to us a little bit about that and share with us just what happened when you reached the other side?
Well, he again took me. The first thing that I always hit on the other side of the shimmering doorway is a beautiful meadow. That's my first encounter with the spirit side all the time, and it was incredibly beautiful, lush green grass, tall, majestic trees, and wildflowers resplendent in 1,000 different colors. Just quite an amazing scene. And then from there we walked through the meadow, went to the White City on the spirit side, which I'd been to before, that he calls Aglaia. And then we walked down the main boulevard and went into the Hall of Wisdom again, where we had another meeting with the Council of Wise Ones. And the Council of Wise Ones is the body of committee of very advanced souls whose job it is to oversee all the incarnations on Earth. And so I had a brief discussion with the chair of that committee. Her name is Sophia, and she basically reiterated to some degree what she had told me in my first encounter with her, was that they're very concerned about where our human race is right now. We're at a crucial crossroads in our development. We have very advanced technology, but our spiritual and emotional intelligence has not kept up. As a result, all too often, too many of us allow our negative emotions like fear, anger, hate, and greed rule too much of our lives, and that results in a lot of violence and conflicts and wars and genocide and terrorist acts and so on that you hear about every day. And she says it's really incumbent on humans to change their ways, to curtail and smother their negative emotions and fully embrace love and compassion so that we can raise our vibrations, and eventually, ultimately, if we raise our vibrations enough, we can ascend to Earth in a higher dimension, which some people refer to as the New Earth. And so she was saying, we've really got to focus on that, and the people who are aware of what the problem is need to spread the message that's coming from Spirit and they're sending messages through many different channels, like I am through my books, and you are, Lindsay, through your radio show and your other activities, and there's messages all over the world, and the message is being blasted out to humans so that more and more people become spiritually aware, spiritually enlightened, and realize that we have to change our ways before we really end up destroying ourselves and everything else on the planet. So that was her plea to me again, to reinforce her earlier message that I needed to get my message out to everyone so that we can change our ways. So that was the first thing I did, going back to the spirit side for my third book.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other. Do you want me just to carry on, Lindsay? Or do you have a question?
I do, because I want to know what were the types of things that she said that we should do. Did she give examples of the stuff that we're supposed to do to help that occur?
Yeah, she said we have to understand that, when you see other people in your life walking down the street, coworkers, people on the freeway, you have to understand, she says, that they are souls having a human journey just like you are, and that we shouldn't regard ourselves as being separate, that we should understand that we're all part of the one, we're all part of the source. And that means that, whatever you do to somebody else, you're really doing to yourself. And so as soon as we realize that, and as soon as we stop judging other people because they have a different color of skin, or they speak a different language, or they have a different religion, or different politics, or whatever, as soon as we put that aside and we can learn to love them, as we love ourselves and we love the people in our family, then we're going to get on a better track, and we're going to be able to embrace love and compassion and discard our negative emotions. So that's really the thing that we have to do. She says we're all on unique journeys. Nobody's journey is the same, and everybody has a different path for evolution. And we shouldn't judge other people because we don't know where they've been, what challenges they faced, or what challenges they're going to face. So it's really a matter of looking at other people with respect and compassion. And that also applies to the other animals on our planet, because she said they're quite dismayed at the way humans have been abusing animals over the last few centuries, and killing them for sport, and trapping them and putting them in zoos and aquatic parks and whatever. And she says that that's not really fair, that we shouldn't abuse our position on Earth, and we should respect animals and treat them with the dignity that they deserve. So, it's a fairly simple message, hard to implement, Lindsay, because it's so easy for us as humans to have a flare-up of negative emotions. But what we really have to do is try to curtail that, stifle the negative emotions, and just understand that we really have to project love to everyone else around us, including the animals on our planet.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And it's interesting because when you talk about the animals on the planet, for some reason I feel like, the animals are so in tune, but I do feel as though people are gravitating more to either, unless I'm just noticing it right now, energy healing, or being around more animals now and focusing their energy on, maybe giving energy healing to the animals and that sort of thing. It could be something that I've kind of, in the past, I wasn't really aware of, and now I'm aware of, but I've been noticing people want more of a purpose, and they want to give back to Earth. Did she mention that?
Yeah, that's a great
at
thing.
all?
Yeah, no, and the message was clearly that not all humans are on the same wavelength, that there's been a huge spiritual awakening in the last, say 30 years or so, where more and more people are becoming more spiritually aware of who they are, their place in the universe, what other people's role in their life is, and the place of animals. And so there's more and more people getting there, which is really encouraging, because as she said, 30 years ago I wouldn't have written my books, and if I had, no one would have read them. And you wouldn't have had your radio show 30 years ago, because people just weren't ready for that. They weren't ready to accept what you say or what I say. And so there's been a lot of progress, but we have a long ways to go. And it's really part of our job is to try to spread that message to all the other people who aren't even aware of the problem, never mind trying to address how to solve it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a big thing. What did she say about that? What did she say? Did she say anything about the children that are coming in to our Earth, and if they're kind of programmed differently and more sensitive. Because I've noticed that with children, it seems like they're becoming more sensitive.
Yeah, she did say that in the last number of years that they've been working hard at basically recruiting what she referred to as quite advanced souls to come here to and incarnate on Earth as humans to try to help the cause. And so part of that with the children is probably because they're more advanced souls. They've had more lives, on Earth, elsewhere, in the galaxy, and so they're sort of very advanced, wise souls who are incarnating to help us to nudge us over the obstacles we now face. So that's probably why you sense that children are just wiser. Sort of like a lot of children seem to be like old souls, and that's probably because they've been around for a long time.
Yes. Now, I know in one part of the book also you went on adventures to the spirit side and you connected with Mother Mary and Jesus. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that was it was quite an interesting meeting. I actually saw a scene, initially a scene of in the Akashic records of Jesus. It was a scene from his life. Actually, it was the day of celebration of his marriage to Mary Magdalene, and I actually saw that scene, and I learned that yes, he was married to Mary Magdalene. They had children, and contrary to what the scriptures say, and I met with his mother as well. And she was a delightful person, wise, compassionate soul, who said that contrary to what the scriptures say, she was not a virgin when Jesus was born. She conceived Jesus through the regular intercourse with her husband Joseph. So it was not the divine intervention of the Holy Spirit. It was sort of a normal course pregnancy, and that she had children after Jesus, even though the scriptures basically, those references have been edited out, and they're no longer there. And that was just done by some of the early leaders of the church because they felt that she was a better person to be venerated if she was a virgin all her life and didn't have other children. So it was just one of their funny attitudes about sex that the early Christian leaders, at least some of them, had. And she said that Jesus was a master. He was a master soul who incarnated on Earth to help humans increase their spiritual awareness and become better people. And so because he was a master, he had learned how to focus his thoughts into powerful beams of energy, and that's how he performed his miracles. And so he learned, so he could turn water to wine and walk on water and raise people from the dead because he was a master who had learned to use the energy of the universe to accomplish his miracles. And so it was a very interesting encounter. Lindsay, I'm getting a real bad echo.
Oh, do you hear an echo right now?
I do. I hear it when I'm speaking.
Okay, that's interesting. Let me see if you can still hear it now. Let me just make sure. Is it still popping up?
Not so far. I think maybe you fixed it. No,
okay.
It's still there. It's just echoing what I say, and it's a bit disconcerting.
That's interesting. Okay, let me have you maybe call back in if that's okay. Is that all right with you?
Yep.
Okay, and I'll stay on here. Hopefully it will be okay.
I'll sign off and dial back in.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So as we're connecting in and kind of taking a little moment away from Garnet's story, just listening to the story and experiencing and reflecting on what he went through with just going through and leaving this realm to travel to the other realms. It's pretty amazing to listen to this story and think, wow, imagine if that happened and you can experience this. And I know that you may think that this is a moment to possibly better our space right now. You can do your own job by connecting and having compassion for other people. So let's see if this works. Garnet, can you hear me okay?
I can, Lindsay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Is it still echoing for you?
Yeah, it is.
It is. Okay. It's funny because I'm actually using a microphone tonight instead of the phone. So I'm wondering. Let's see. I'm actually, there's a person in the group that could hear. She said she could hear a lot of noise in the background. So I'm wondering if we can still hear that. I'm going to see if I can actually hang up and call in from the phone to make it better. Okay? So I'm going to do that right now. You can stay on the line? Yeah, you can stay on the line, and I'm going to hang up and try that. Maybe that will work better. Okay, hold on 1 second. Garnet?
Yes?
Can you hear me okay? Is that better?
I can hear you fine, and I think the echo's gone. I don't hear it now.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay, no worries.
It must have been the microphone. Isn't it funny how that technology? But I want to continue talking about what you were speaking about with, seeing the scenes of Mother Mary and seeing that for yourself and realizing that there was a reason how it was coming about for you. And you start, when you saw this, was it like you were in the scene, or is it more like you were watching a movie?
Well, when I saw the marriage scene from Jesus and Mary Magdalene, it was in the Akashic Records, so it was like I was watching a 3D movie, and it was a celebration. Mm-hmm. They were sort of at the head table, and the people were all around them in other tables, and they were eating food and drinking wine and having a celebration. So it was kind of it was like watching a movie. And in the meantime, Albert's explaining to me sort of what's gone on here, and the fact that they were actually married, and that the scriptures were edited early on to delete the references to the marriage of Jesus and Mary Magdalene for whatever purpose they decided that they didn't want to have Jesus being married, and he was supposed to be celibate all his life. And Albert says that's just totally untrue. He was married, and he had three children with Mary Magdalene. And what happened was that when he was crucified, or after he was crucified, and then he rose up, his mother Mary and Mary Magdalene actually smuggled their children out of Palestine to another country, where they ended up, they grew up, got married, had families of their own, and lived in relative obscurity. And so that's the story. And so there are definitely people on our planet who have direct bloodlines from Jesus and Mary Magdalene, but he wouldn't identify them to me. He just said it's not important for me to know that, so don't know who they are. But anyway, that's the story of Jesus. And and I said to Jesus, well, since you could perform all these miracles, why did you let yourself be crucified, in what was a seemingly horrible death? Why didn't you just take disappear, use your miracle powers to get out of there? And he says he could have done that, but he thought that his crucifixion and subsequent ascension would make a more dramatic statement to his followers, and he wanted to make that sort of high-impact statement. And he had assumed that after he left this planet, that his followers would start a new religion, and he hoped that his message would be spread by them to help humanity, move on towards the more spiritual enlightenment. But he said he didn't know how it would all turn out, and he wasn't sure what direction it would take. And he said, the Christian church, which developed following his death, has done a lot of good things in the world. But he says that some of the leaders were very misguided. They were following their own agendas, and they came up with a bunch of rules and beliefs, so on, just to give them power and control over the people. He wasn't happy about that, but he said basically, well, nothing I can do about it. That's just the way human life on Earth sometimes develops, and that's the way it was. So it was an interesting conversation with him. Very, very wise, compassionate soul. You can clearly see that he is a master, very advanced, and that I actually said to him, would you ever consider coming back to Earth one more time to help us, because God knows we need a lot of help here. And he said, yeah, he would. He said that if the Council of Wise Ones asked him to, he will. That hasn't happened yet, and he didn't give me any sort of indication if it ever would. So anyway, personally, I think it would be wonderful if he could reincarnate back on Earth and help us, move up the ladder of spiritual enlightenment.
Right. Now, remember how you mentioned a few minutes ago where you were communicating, and they said that there are people here on Earth that are connected to Mary and I think you said Jesus also, that are people here, and they said it doesn't matter who it is, you don't need to know right now, or you don't need to know.
Those are.
Did they say anything about them being leaders in our Earth, or is it more like, it could be a child that's connected to them that are here?
Yeah, no, he wouldn't give me any details about which country the children of Jesus and Mary went to, or their names, identities, where they lived, or anything about them. He just said it's not something that's important now. So all I know is that there are some blood offspring of Jesus and Mary Magdalene who obviously are still living on our planet, but he wouldn't identify them. So you can only hope. You could probably assume that some of them have been spiritual leaders, have been very wise and compassionate souls, just because of the of who their parents were, and for some people now it would be several generations ago. But he didn't give me any more details, so I can't elaborate on that.
Right. That's so interesting, and it makes sense that would happen too. Now, I know that you experienced. Was this one meeting where you went through outer body experiences and came back and had this whole book come to you, or was it more like a series of astral travel adventures?
It was a series. It happened over a period of several months. And he would, after, I'd go on an astral trip to the spirit side or meet with people or other planets or whatever, and then he would bring me, before morning, he would bring me back to my bedroom and, help my astral body slip back into my physical body. And then I'd wake up the next morning and I would feel very refreshed, and I would remember in vivid detail everything I'd seen and heard on the previous night's astral trips. And I remember them very vividly. It wasn't like a dream, because any dream I've ever had, the details just disappear within an hour or two after I wake up. But these memories stayed with me very vividly for like months afterwards. And so when I woke up, I would one of the first things I do is go to my computer and bang out notes about my memories of what I did the night before, so that I could use those as the basis for my manuscript. So it was a series of astral trips. He never told me when he was coming. He never gave me the agenda. He would just sort of show up unexpectedly. Sometimes it would be 2 nights in a row, and sometimes it would be a week apart. I could never figure out when he was coming, and he wouldn't tell me. But he always had something very interesting to show me, and he had an agenda for me. He wasn't doing this to entertain me, Lindsay. He was there to show me things and allow me to meet people that I could write about what I saw and heard in my book, and so that everyone could have access to it. So he had a very definite agenda for me, and I was sort of in his hands. Wherever he wanted to go, I just followed.
That's really interesting. And does he speak about, if you try to, do you still communicate with him on a telepathic level outside of these, astral trips that you have with him? Yeah,
I do. I can still communicate telepathically with him. But for the most part, my major experiences in the last while have been on these astral trips, and so I do both. But the main things, he doesn't sort of want to convey too much information to me telepathically. He'd rather show me what he wants me to see, because he said, I believe a picture is worth 1,000 words, so I really want you to see what I show you and write about it, rather than just have me tell you what I want you to write. So that sort of was his approach after my first book. The first book was basically just a telepathic dialogue, And so now he's decided that taking me on astral trips is a better way for me to see what he wants me to learn about, so I can be better able to write about it.
Right. I'm so interested in it because when I probably mentioned this a couple of shows ago when at one point when you were on the show, but when I was younger, I used to have outer body experiences, and even in high school I did too. And I want to say it was a few years ago I had an experience too where I left my body. But there's been moments where I want to do it all the time. And you know how you've gone to a completely different realm. So you know that feeling of, it's like a feeling of freedom and being able to experience that. Has your guide ever said anything about bringing people on these journeys for other people to experience things like this, that they remember, that they can come back and remember for themselves? I know we always leave our body, but did he speak about that, where there's ways that we can get to this point? I know every situation's different.
Well, I did ask him the question because I've been asked by people who read my books, like, well, how can I make a direct contact with my guide like you do with Albert? How can I astral travel with my guide? Tell me how to, and I've asked Albert that question. He says, well, if it was intended for you when you were planning your life beforehand, your life plan, that you would be able to do some astral traveling, then it will happen. And if you don't, then it's because it wasn't planned for you. It's not something that you wanted to experience. So he says, there's no magic way for people to learn how to astral travel. A lot of people have done it on their own. I mean, independent of their guides, and then you've had a few OBEs yourself. Other people have. So if that happens to you, it's because it was meant for you to experience that as a sort of one of the learning lessons in your life. And if people don't experience that, it's because it sort of wasn't on the table for them. So, that's not a very satisfying answer, I know, Lindsay, but that's just what Albert said. Is that,
but it makes sense.
Because I can't give you a manual you can give to people to say, here's how you can learn how to astral travel. He says that isn't going to happen. It has to be for special purposes for people who need to experience that as part of one of their life challenges. Yes,
that's a really that's a great answer that it came from him, and it makes sense that would be. Now, I have a question from someone that's following the show. She just sent a Facebook chat, and she wanted me to ask you if the face of God, when we always see the image of what God is supposed to look like, the picture that we've seen, is it just energy, or does God really look like that? She wants to know.
Well, yeah, God doesn't have a physical appearance. God is sort of the totality. God, or I like to use the word source. The source is sort of the totality of everything in the universe. The source created everything in the universe, and we're all part of the source. Everything in the universe is connected to the source, and we're connected to each other. So the source doesn't have a physical manifestation like some religions would describe. So he doesn't really take a form that you can look at. I haven't seen the source. I mean, I asked Albert one time could I meet the source, and he says, well, the source is everywhere. You look at the bird sitting on the tree over there. That's part of the source. You look at the little girl sliding down the slide. That's part of the source. I mean, everything that you see is part of the source. So it's not sort of one specific locality. The source is just everywhere. But he did take me, and I think I described this in my the last show. He did take me to a focal point of the source, which is sort of like a central sun near the center of our galaxy. And it wasn't the source per se, but it was the focal point. And there I was immersed into this sun with Albert, and it was like I was in the middle of a pool of indescribable, unconditional love. Like it was the source of all love in the universe. It was an amazing feeling, and so it was. That was one of my more exciting adventures with Albert, was to sort of be immersed in this pool of pure, unfettered, unconditional love. That was sort of the focal point of the source in our galaxy. So that was an amazing experience. But as I was approaching this central sun, it looked just like our sun. I mean, that's what it looked like. It didn't have any other sort of form. I mean, the source is just energy, and the sum total of all the energy in the universe.
Right, and that's when we pass away, and when our body is shed, and our soul kind of leaves the physical body when we die, and I'm putting die in quotes, we go to that space of unconditional love. Is that right?
Yeah, we pass over to the spirit side. We don't all go into this focal point of the source that I went to. The spirit side is like basically it's like where I was. There was the first entry point is a beautiful meadow. Then there's this beautiful white city where people are strolling. They look like ordinary humans, except they're dressed in many different colorful garments from many different eras and times and on Earth. And Albert says souls like to appear oftentimes in a way that they had in a previous life that they quite enjoyed. So there's different costumes from different countries, different eras, different time periods. So it was a city, just like you might see a city here, with people walking around. And so that sort of was my contact with the spirit side. Now, there's a whole bunch of other places on the spirit side that I haven't been to, but that was sort of my initial point where Albert took me. That's where the Council of Wise Ones was. That's where the Akashic Records were. So that was sort of my main experience on the spirit side, is in this white city and in the meadow outside. The central sun actually was something different.
Okay,
but
that makes
on the
a lot
spirit
of sense.
side, you're quite right. Yeah, on the spirit side, all souls love each other unconditionally. There's no question about that, and there's nothing but love there. There's no negative emotions. We don't have physical bodies on the spirit side. We're beings of energy, and it's a very delightful place. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. What about going back to speak about some experiences that you had with just different things that you ran into? I know that in the book you talk about experiencing even aliens too. I believe in it. I believe in aliens, and I know I haven't really had anyone talk about aliens on my show, but I am definitely open, and I'm interested to know what your experience was with the spacecraft near Roswell. Where you experienced
that was very interesting. That's very interesting because the Roswell crash of 1947 is sort of a famous episode that a lot of people still talk about. And there was a number of eyewitnesses who said it was a spacecraft who crashed, and then the military authorities basically said no, it was a hot air balloon that crashed, and there was no spacecraft. But I actually saw what happened. Albert took me to the Akashic Records where I got to view this, and it's like I'm watching a 3D movie. And I saw it was it was a spacecraft which was really manned by aliens from another planet, and it was a scout craft that was basically inspecting a high altitude weather balloon that the U.S. military had put up in New Mexico. And for some reason they had an equipment malfunction, and their little craft smashed into the balloon, and then it ended up crashing on the desert floor below. And it sort of bounced and skipped a few times and got buried partway into the side of a sand hill. And I watched this, and in the spacecraft I could see that there were 3 little aliens there that were obviously manning it, and it seemed like 2 of them had died on impact. 1 was still alive and moving. It opened the door to the spacecraft, and eventually, a bunch of jeeps and trucks and so on from the Roswell Army Air Base came and to the craft, and they pulled the aliens out. They took the one that was still alive back to the Army Air Base, and the doctors there tried to save it because it was still alive. Unfortunately, they couldn't. But they put the spacecraft on a flatbed truck and covered it with a tarp and hauled it back to the Army Air Base, where it stayed for a while, then eventually got moved to Edwards Air Force Base, and then from there it got moved to Area 51 in Nevada, where it still is. And the bodies of the little aliens are still preserved in chemicals, and they're in Area 51 as well. And the military decided, this was supported later by the government, decided to cover it up, deny that there was a spacecraft, and when they had a press conference, they told everyone that what these people saw was not a spacecraft crashing, but a weather balloon, and they showed the wreckage of this weather balloon, which was in fact the wreckage of the weather balloon that was hit by the spacecraft. So they were true.
Oh my God!
In the sense that here's the weather balloon, but they didn't say what happened to the spacecraft. So they covered it way up, and it's still been covered up, and it's been part of the major cover-up by governments around the world to deny the existence of UFOs and alien spacecraft, even though there's so many sightings all over the world every year. And it's just an unfortunate policy that they have. Albert says that we've been visited by many different alien groups, really advanced alien groups from many different planets over the eons, and they're very benevolent. They're here to help us. They want to watch our progress, try to help us as best they can. He says someday they will make open, direct contact with all humanity, but only when they think the time is right, and that hasn't happened yet. But someday in the future, we will have open contact with them.
So what about, because I'm so interested in this topic, I don't know if you've ever heard where there's different alien situations where they put them on a stretcher and they, poke them with the needle, humans with the needle, and humans can't speak during that time. They can't voice what's happening. It's like a telepathic communication. Did you hear anything about that when you saw this crash or experience anything that, or why they're poking people?
Yeah, no, I did ask Albert about that, because he said these races are all benevolent. They're here to help us. They have no malevolent intentions. And I said, well, what about the cases of people that report being abducted, taken aboard the spacecraft and being poked and prodded and so on? And he says, well, that unfortunately that may be frightening to the people who are having this done to them, but the intentions are good. They're there to study us, to try to study our anatomy and our biological conditions. Sometimes they implant communication devices on the people so that they can keep in better contact with them and follow them as they go. I mean, similar to what we do with some wild animals, we put a radio collar on them so we can track their movements, and so that's kind of like what they do sometimes. But he says that the people, the abductees, are never harmed, in any permanent sense, and oftentimes their memories of their abductions are deliberately blacked out so they don't have to live with it. And oftentimes they don't ever recall it again until they're under hypnosis, and all of a sudden the details come back to them. But it's all, he says, it's very well intentioned. They don't mean us any harm, and they're really here to help us.
And I wonder if the people that are abducted have, more of a spiritual awakening, even though they don't remember it on a conscious level. If they, do something where they would cause them to be more enlightened. Did they say anything about that?
No, he didn't say anything about that, but I can well imagine that the abductees, even though they have no direct recollection of what to them, they probably have experienced a change of life, and they probably have become, in a way, inexplicably more spiritually enlightened because of their contact with the aliens, and they just don't remember. Sort of like I don't remember where this came from or what happened to me, but I just feel different, and I think that happens often.
Yes. Right. Now, what happens, I know that with this book, we talk about how it's like an urgency that we need to embrace people and, love them and bring compassion to each other. What happens if that doesn't happen? Do they say anything about that? What if we don't show compassion?
Yeah, because if we don't change our ways and embrace love and compassion, then we couldn't end up crashing and burning like some of the other advanced civilizations in Earth's past. And we've all heard of a few of them, like Atlantis and Lemuria. There's been a few others we haven't heard of yet. But the humans have advanced up in a technological sense to a very high level many times in Earth's past, and then they end up crashing and burning, destroying themselves. And so what they're saying to us, what the Council and Albert are saying is, look at humans, you're in the same position. You have advanced technology. You have weapons of mass destruction that if unleashed, could basically destroy all life on the planet, and you have to make sure that you don't have this happen to you, because it's going to end badly. And so that's why we really have to focus now, before we get past the point of no return. But he's very confident. He says we have a long ways to go, but he's very confident that we can overcome this and move on the path of spiritual enlightenment before we destroy ourselves. But he says it's important for the people like yourself and myself and all the other channels in the world to get the message out, so that more and more people are aware of what the problem is and how we can solve it. And so that's what we need to do, is get the message out.
Yes. Now, I have an interesting question. I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm using my intuition with this one. And I don't know if we've ever talked about it before. I don't know why I'm bringing it up. But did they say anything about the water of this planet? You know how sometimes we drink water and we hear that there's chemicals in the water, or there's something done to the water. There's fluoride in the water. There's, it's not healthy to drink. Did they say anything about water and it being purified, or, what we need to do to kind of keep our bodies healthy?
No, not per se about water, but I had one of my interesting visits, which is sort of related to this, is with the consciousness of Mother Earth, Gaia, which was really quite amazing, because Albert took me to a cavern under the North Pole, and there I had a conversation with Gaia. Before this, I had thought that our planet was nothing but a conglomerate of inert molecules forming, rocks and mountains and deserts and oceans and so on. I found out that our planet has a consciousness, and I had a conversation with Gaia. It was very quite interesting. And one of the things that she said was that she was really dismayed at the way humans have been polluting Mother Earth, by spilling chemicals into the oceans, noxious fumes into the atmosphere, and toxic waste into the soil and so on. And she was really quite concerned about the pollution that humans were heaping on her, and she didn't understand why we were doing it, because she really wanted us to live in peace and harmony with her and all of her other animals. And she's fiercely protective of everything that lives on her planet, her animals, her plants, even humans. And so she said to me, the message I want you to take back to your humans is that if they continue on their current course of action with all their pollution and all their abuse of the other animals on my planet, it's going to go badly. And so she really implored us to sort of change our ways, clean up our act, and learn to live in peaceful harmony with the other animals on our planet, and to treat her ecosystem with dignity and respect, because it is our home, and she couldn't understand why we were damaging the place that we live in. And so that was sort of a message. And so she didn't directly deal with water, but obviously she was dismayed at the way we have been polluting our water, our oceans with garbage and chemicals and so on. And she really implored us to stop what we're doing and change our ways.
Yes. And I'm wondering if plastic is going to go away. Plastic is a huge part of that, the pollution. I wonder if there's something that's going to change where we kind of do away with plastic and something else comes in.
Well, Albert didn't mention that. He usually doesn't give me predictions about what humans are going to do, but he clearly he said that it's in our control as humans to stop our pollution, whether it's plastic in the oceans or chemicals in our rivers or fumes in our atmosphere. It's clearly within our ability to restrict and stop that pollution. We just have to get focused and decide that that's what we want to do, and so it's really in our control. Yeah. He said nobody's going to give you a magic wand to cure the problem for you. You have to do it yourselves.
Now, another question that I have, and I know we only have a short amount of time left, this went by way too fast, is what you spoke about in the book, that you were able to see dinosaurs, and that you were in that point where you could see what was going on with them. When you were witnessing dinosaurs and the way that they lived, did you see any sort of humans or any other living animal during that time?
Yeah, I did actually, and this is in the Akashic Records again, and Albert showed me the past lives of a human civilization that actually lived among the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And of course, all the anthropologists and archaeologists say, well, humans haven't been around that long. They haven't discovered it yet, because humans were clearly there, and they had a neat little civilization. They lived in a walled city. They lived in peace and harmony with each other. There was no crime or violence. They respected Mother Earth, didn't pollute her. They respected the creatures that they lived beside. They killed only what they needed to eat and for clothing. There was no waste, and there was no sport killing. So they were very respectful of the other animals on the planet. Yes, they lived among dinosaurs. And in fact, I saw in one scene in the Akashic Records a hunting party where, and the other thing about this civilization is men and women were equal in all respects. So they shared the cooking, cleaning, child rearing, and hunting duties equally. So I saw this hunting party with half men, half women, who actually snuck up and killed a hadrosaurus, cut it up and strung the meat on poles, and then headed back to their village just in time before a Tyrannosaurus Rex, who was chasing them, trying to get their kill, caught up to them, and they managed to escape behind their walled city. So it was a very nice, peaceful civilization. 65 million years ago. Unfortunately, they perished when most of the dinosaurs perished after an asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula, and it kicked up a bunch of dust and smoke and triggered volcanoes all over the world, and basically it ended up Earth having like a nuclear winter for like 2 or 3 years, and that's how most of the dinosaurs disappeared. That human civilization was buried under a couple 100 meters of lava. And so there's no record of it. Archaeologists have not found it yet because it's very deep under this bed of lava. So I did see humans living among the dinosaurs. It was really quite fascinating.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. About that, it just triggered something in me. I know we talked about Atlantis for a second. Did you witness anything about Atlantis and what happened with that? I know you mentioned that there was something that, because they weren't taking care of things, was that why Atlantis?
Yeah, no, he didn't actually show me any scenes from Atlantis, but he did show me scenes from another advanced civilization that was living on an island in the South Atlantic. This is not Atlantis, it was a different one, and there it was a fairly advanced civilization, and they ended up having advanced technology. They let things get out of control. They were trying to develop a warp drive to travel between the stars. That technology sort of got out of hand. They ended up destroying themselves, and their civilization and their island sank down to the bottom of the Atlantic. So he showed me that one. That wasn't Atlantis. It was a different one. He said basically that story has been repeated over and over again with human civilizations on our planet, and that was just another example that archaeologists have not yet discovered. Someday they will at the bottom of the South Atlantic. But that he was just trying to reinforce to me the fact that our civilization now is at a similar point, and we better, change our ways, or we'll end up like some of the other disasters.
Yes. Wow, that's so interesting. I want to have time to kind of tell everyone where to go to get your book, to buy your book. But before I do that, the big message that really comes up today is to make sure that we're, showing compassion to one another, and then also taking care of Mother Earth and the things, and even the animals around, right? Is that the big message that we should, one person
absolutely.
at a time makes a huge difference.
Absolutely, and that's right. Everyone can make a difference. One person at a time, we can make a change in the world, and that's what we need to do. Is we need to stop polluting our planet. We need to stop abusing the other animals, and we need to embrace everyone, ourselves, other humans, and all animals with love and compassion. And if we can do this, we can raise our vibrations, and we'll end up in a much happier planet to live in, and we'll all be in a much better place. And that's really where we have to go, and we have to do this before we end up destroying all life on our planet.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you came on the show again, Garnet. And can you tell us exactly where we can go to buy your book?
Sure. The best source about my books is on my website, which is garnetschulhauser.com. That's hard to remember, but if you Google Dancing on a Stamp or Dance of Heavenly Bliss, you will get to my website. There you can read a synopsis about my books. You can download a free excerpt. You can watch a book video of all my books. And you can you can access all of the recordings of all of my previous radio shows on my website, because I post all the recordings on my website. This is show number 98 for me, Lindsay. And,
wow! My gosh.
Yeah, that's since June of 2013. So I've been busy. And also, my website, there are buy links where you can. I have the links to all the popular online stores like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and a number of other ones. You click on those, you can get right to the site where all 3 of my books are available for sale, and you can buy them there. My books are in a number of bricks and mortar stores, and if your favorite bookstore does not have it, they can order it in for you. So my website's the best source of information.
Yes, and I definitely suggest going into the bookstore too and just telling them to order the book, because I feel like this is a book that everyone needs to read, any of your books, really. Thank you so much again for coming on the show, and I can't wait for the next one to come out when that comes about too.
Well, thank you for having me, Lindsay. And yes, I'm almost finished book 4, so it will be out sometime probably next year.
Okay, good. Well, we'll have you on the show again, definitely.
That'll be great. I'd love to do that.
Okay, perfect. Have a great night.
You too, Lindsay. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to to the show tonight. If you're just tuning in, you can always go to lindsaymarino.com and click on the radio tab, and you can listen to any of the old episodes, including tonight's episode from the very beginning. And again, I'm going to actually put the link to Garnet's website underneath my Facebook post, but go to Garnet's website or even type in his book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night.